Walk into any room of married men. Ask them honestly, when no one else is listening, "Are you happy?" Watch their faces, the pause before they answer, the careful construction of their response. "It's good. We're making it work." Marriage is hard, but worth it. Never just, "Yes, I'm happy." Because here's what nobody wants to admit. Happy marriages have become extinct, not rare, not difficult. Extinct. And the men living in these marriages know it. They feel it every single day. But they can't say it out loud because admitting your marriage is slowly suffocating you means admitting you made a catastrophic mistake. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why happy marriages have disappeared, what changed about women that made traditional marriage impossible, and why the men who stay single aren't missing out but dodging a bullet. But I need to warn you before we continue. What I'm about to reveal will make you see every married couple differently. Once you understand what's actually happening behind closed doors, you'll never believe the performance again. But before we expose why happy marriages no longer exist, you need to understand something crucial. This isn't about individual women being bad people. This isn't about blaming anyone. This is about systemic changes that have made the institution of marriage incompatible with modern female psychology. And to understand that, we first need to look at what marriage was supposed to provide and why it no longer delivers. Marriage was a contract. Simple, clear, understood by both parties. The man provides resources, protection, and stability. The woman provides domestic labor, sexual exclusivity, and children. Neither party got everything they wanted, but both got enough to make the arrangement functional. This contract worked for thousands of years, not because it made everyone blissfully happy, but because it was fair, balanced, and created the stability necessary for raising children and building civilization. Both parties sacrificed something. Both parties received something. The exchange was clear, but that contract is dead. Completely, irreversibly dead. And here's what killed it. Women stopped holding up their end while still demanding men hold up theirs. Modern women want traditional male provision without traditional female obligation. They want you to be the provider, protector, and leader. They want the financial security your resources provide. They want the status that comes from being with a high-value man. But they don't want to provide what made that arrangement balanced. They don't want to be submissive or cooperative. They don't want to prioritize your needs the way you're expected to prioritize theirs. They don't want to maintain the home or your peace. They don't want sexual exclusivity to mean actual obligation. They want the benefits without the responsibilities, the privileges without the duties, the security without the surrender. And marriage under these conditions becomes a catastrophically bad deal for men. Think about what modern marriage actually looks like. You work, often at a job you hate, to provide financial stability. You come home to a woman who doesn't appreciate your provision because she's been told she deserves it, who doesn't respect your authority because she's been taught that male leadership is oppression, who doesn't maintain the home because she's not your maid, who doesn't prioritize intimacy because she's not obligated to perform. But you're still obligated to earn, to provide, to fiki, to lead when she wants leadership and submit when she wants control, to be strong but sensitive, successful but available, ambitious but attentive, traditional but modern, alpha but evolved. These requirements are impossible, deliberately impossible, and that's the point. Because when you inevitably fail to meet contradictory standards, she has justification for her dissatisfaction, for her complaints, for her eventual departure. And when she leaves, she takes half of everything you built while you were busy trying to be everything she demanded. This is why there are no happy marriages anymore. Not because men stopped trying, but because the game became unwinnable. And the men still playing, they're not happy. They're just trapped. Let's be specific about what destroyed happy marriages. 3 forces converged to make traditional marriage impossible, and all 3 target female psychology in ways that guarantee marital unhappiness. Force 1, Social media destroyed female contentment. A woman today receives more male attention in a single day than her grandmother received in an entire year. Every photo uploaded generates validation. Every post brings comments. DMs from men around the world arrive constantly. And this creates something toxic for marriage: permanent dissatisfaction. When your wife has access to unlimited male attention, you stop being special. You're one source of validation among hundreds. And because human psychology adapts to baseline stimulation, the validation you provide becomes invisible, expected, insufficient. She's not comparing you to reasonable standards. She's comparing you to highlight reels, to the most attractive, successful, exciting moments other men present online, to influencers who fake perfect relationships for content, to ex-boyfriends whose flaws she's forgotten and whose lives look better through the filter of memory and social media curation. You can't compete with fantasy, and social media is fantasy. It's everyone's best moments compiled and presented as their normal. But she doesn't know that, or she knows it intellectually but doesn't feel it emotionally. So she looks at you, the actual man in front of her with actual flaws and normal struggles, and feels disappointment. This permanent state of comparing you unfavorably to digital illusions makes happiness impossible, because you're real and they're not. You have bad days and they only show good ones. You age and they curate. You're accessible and they're mysterious. You're known and they're imagined as perfect. Marriage requires contentment, but social media makes contentment impossible for women. There's always someone more attractive, more successful, more exciting, just a scroll away. And every scroll reminds her that maybe, possibly, she's settled. Force 2. Feminism taught women to resent what men provide. Previous generations of women valued male provision. A man who worked hard to support his family was respected. His sacrifice was appreciated. His resource provision was seen as love expressed through action. But modern feminism taught women that male provision is oppression, that being financially dependent on a man is weakness, that accepting traditional gender roles is betraying yourself, that appreciating what your husband provides makes you complicit in patriarchy. So now, when you work 60 hours a week to maintain the lifestyle she expects, she doesn't see sacrifice. She sees you fulfilling your obligation. When you provide financial security, she doesn't feel gratitude. She feels entitled. When you lead, she doesn't feel protected. She feels controlled. The reframing is complete. Everything that used to generate female appreciation for male value now generates female resentment. You can't make her happy by providing, because providing no longer counts as contribution in her mind. It's just you doing what you're supposed to do while she does the real work of emotional labor and maintaining the relationship. Force 3. Dating apps gave women options they can't psychologically handle. Before dating apps, women evaluated potential partners from a limited local pool. The best man available in her social circle, workplace, or community was the realistic ceiling of her options. But dating apps gave her access to thousands of men, and female psychology isn't equipped to handle this. Because women's mate selection evolved to compare a handful of real options, not to filter through unlimited digital options while maintaining realistic standards. What happens? Hypergamy goes nuclear. She's not comparing you to realistic alternatives. She's comparing you to the best trait of every man she has access to. His looks, that one's money, another's height, someone else's status, a different man's excitement. You can't be the best at everything, nobody can. But she has access to men who are individually better than you at specific traits. And her psychology interprets this as evidence that she could do better. Even though no single man has all those traits. Even though most of those men wouldn't commit to her. Even though access doesn't equal obtainability. The result? Permanent restlessness. She chose you, but part of her always wonders if she should have chosen differently, if she settled, if she could still upgrade. and this wondering makes happiness impossible. Here's the question nobody asks. What does a modern wife actually contribute to a marriage? Let's be honest, brutally, uncomfortably honest. Because this is where the collapse of marriage becomes obvious. When you actually inventory what modern wives provide versus what modern husbands are expected to provide, the imbalance is staggering. What husbands provide: financial support, often majority or entirety of household income, home maintenance, repairs, yard work, anything requiring physical labor, emotional stability, expected to remain calm while she processes emotions, problem solving for both practical and emotional issues, status and social proof through career success, protection, physical and financial security, retirement planning and wealth building, major financial decisions and risk management. What modern wives provide: inconsistent domestic labor, and only if she feels like it, because she's not your maid. Occasional cooking, often outsourced to delivery or convenience food. Sporadic cleaning, frequently complained about despite you also working full-time. Sexual access, withheld strategically or simply low frequency. Emotional processing, which somehow counts as her contribution despite being exhausting for you. Children, but only if she wants them and on her timeline. Companionship, conditional on you meeting her constantly changing needs. Look at that list honestly. Where's the balance? Where's the fair exchange that made traditional marriage functional? The modern wife has been taught that simply existing in the marriage is her contribution, that her presence is the prize you should be grateful for, that managing her own emotions is labor you should appreciate, that occasionally cooking or cleaning when she feels like it is going above and beyond. Meanwhile, your contribution is mandatory, expected, and never enough. You're supposed to provide financially while she decides if she wants to work. You're supposed to do physical labor because that's men's work. You're supposed to lead, but only when she wants to follow. You're supposed to be strong but available, successful but attentive, ambitious but present. And if you point out the imbalance, you're labeled as traditional, misogynistic, or stuck in the past, because acknowledging that she's not holding up her end would require her to actually contribute more. And modern women have been taught that increasing their contribution to marriage is oppression, the sexual dead bedroom reality. Let's address what nobody wants to talk about. Sexual frequency in modern marriages is catastrophically low, not because men's sex drives have decreased, but because modern wives view sex as optional, conditional, and something they provide when they feel like it, not when you need it. Before marriage, she maintained frequency to keep you invested. It was part of the courtship strategy. But after marriage, after securing your commitment and resources, the incentive disappears. Why maintain sexual frequency when you're already locked in legally and financially? The result? Dead bedrooms. Married men having sex less frequently than single men. Sexual rejection becoming so normalized that men stop initiating to avoid the repeated disappointment. And when you try to discuss it, you're made to feel like a predator for wanting intimacy with your own wife. This alone destroys marriage happiness for men. Because men's primary motivation for marriage historically was sexual exclusivity. You gave up all other women for reliable access to one woman. But now you've given up all other women and you don't have reliable access to the one woman you married either. You sacrificed options for security, but the security you received was an illusion. You're not secure. You're trapped with someone who provides less than you need while demanding more than you can give. And this dynamic, this fundamental imbalance between what men provide and what women contribute, this is why happy marriages no longer exist, because happiness requires fair exchange, and modern marriage is the most unfair exchange men can enter into. Here's the darkest truth about modern marriage. Most married men know they're unhappy. They feel it every single day, but they can't leave, not because they don't want to, because the cost of leaving is catastrophic. The financial prison divorce doesn't mean splitting assets 50-50 and moving on. Divorce means the systematic financial destruction of the male's life. She gets half of everything you built, the house you paid for, the retirement you funded, the savings you accumulated through your labor. Assets that have your sweat and sacrifice embedded in them now belong equally to someone who contributed far less. But it doesn't stop at 50%. Add in alimony if she's been strategic about working less than you. Add in child support, calculated on your gross income, not your actual expenses. Add in legal fees that drain savings faster than you thought possible. Add in the cost of maintaining two households while still funding hers. Men come out of divorce having lost 60 to 80% of their net worth. Decades of careful building demolished in a legal process designed to transfer male resources to women regardless of who caused the marriage to fail. And she knows this. She knows you're trapped, that leaving costs you everything while she exits with half your assets, ongoing payments and social sympathy as the abandoned wife. This imbalance of consequence is why she can treat you poorly without fear. Because what are you going to do? Leave and lose everything? The social prison. But the financial cost isn't even the worst part. The social cost of male-initiated divorce is crushing. If she leaves you, you get sympathy. People assume she had reasons, but if you leave her, you're the villain, the man who abandoned his family, who gave up instead of working harder, who wasn't man enough to make it work. Your family questions you. Your friends judge you. Society looks at you with suspicion because men aren't supposed to leave marriages. They're supposed to endure, to sacrifice, to make it work no matter what. This social pressure keeps men trapped in miserable marriages far longer than rational analysis would. Because admitting your marriage is making you miserable means admitting you failed at something men are supposed to succeed at. And most men can't handle that social judgment. The children as hostages. If you have children, the trap is complete. Because now leaving doesn't just cost you financially and socially, it costs you access to your own children. Family courts overwhelmingly favor mothers in custody arrangements. You'll be lucky to get alternating weekends. More likely, you'll get every other weekend and maybe one evening per week. You'll go from seeing your children every day to seeing them a fraction of the time while still paying most of the cost to raise them. And she knows this too. She knows that your love for your children will keep you trapped in a miserable marriage. Because even a bad marriage where you see your kids daily is better than a good divorce where you become a weekend dad. So men stay, not because they're happy, not because they think it will improve, but because leaving costs more than staying. The financial devastation, the social judgment, and the loss of daily access to children create a prison stronger than any physical walls. These men aren't in marriages. They're serving sentences, working jobs to fund lives they don't enjoy, coming home to women who don't respect them, having sex rarely, if at all, raising children in households filled with tension, slowly dying inside while maintaining the appearance that everything's fine. This is modern marriage for most men, and this is why there are no happy marriages anymore. Because the men trapped in them can't leave, and the women in them have no incentive to make them happy. So what's the solution? How do you have a happy marriage in the modern world? Here's the truth nobody wants to hear. You don't. The only winning move is not to play. Every man considering marriage today needs to understand something fundamental. Marriage is a contract where you promise everything and she promises nothing. Where you give up options and she maintains them. Where you face catastrophic consequences for leaving and she faces reward. No rational person would sign a business contract with these terms. Yet millions of men sign marriage contracts without reading the fine print, without understanding what they're actually agreeing to, without calculating the real cost versus the actual benefit. What marriage offers men: companionship you can get from friends, sex you can get without contracts, and probably more of it, children, but at the cost of losing half your assets if it fails, social approval if you care what other people think, The promise of partnership, rarely delivered. What marriage costs. Men, half your assets if she leaves, ongoing financial obligations through alimony and child support, loss of sexual options permanently, loss of freedom to make unilateral decisions, constant obligation to meet contradictory needs, risk of dead bedroom while remaining sexually obligated to only her, years of your life trapped if you're unhappy but can't afford to leave. Look at that exchange honestly. Where's the upside for men? Where's the benefit that justifies the risk? The truth is there isn't one. Modern marriage is a catastrophically bad deal for men. The only men who should consider it are men who are okay with potentially losing everything they've built, or men who are so wealthy that divorce won't destroy them financially. For average men, for men building their lives, for men who value their freedom and peace, marriage is financial suicide with social approval. And the men who are happiest? They're the ones who recognize this and opted out entirely. The men who chose differently. Talk to men who stayed single into their 40s and 50s. Not men who couldn't find anyone, but men who had options and chose differently. Ask them if they regret not marrying. Almost universally, they'll tell you no. They'll tell you about the freedom to build without obligation, the peace that comes from not managing someone else's emotions daily, the financial stability from not splitting assets or paying alimony, the ability to walk away from situations that don't serve them without catastrophic cost. These men aren't missing out. They're winning. They're the ones who read the contract before signing and realized it was designed to transfer their wealth and freedom to someone else. The future of marriage. Marriage rates are plummeting. Men are opting out in record numbers, and society is panicking because civilization depended on men's willingness to sacrifice themselves for family formation. But men are waking up. They're calculating the cost. They're seeing what their married friends actually have versus what they pretend to have. They're watching divorces destroy men they know, and they're choosing differently. This isn't men giving up on love or family. This is men refusing to sign contracts designed to destroy them. This is men finally understanding that the institution of marriage has become incompatible with male well-being. There are no happy marriages anymore because modern marriage wasn't designed to make men happy. It was designed to transfer male resources to women regardless of male happiness. And once men understand that clearly, the only rational choice is to never sign the contract in the first place. If you understand this, write in the comments, never signing. Because the future belongs to men who choose freedom over obligation, peace over performance, and building their own empires over funding someone else's life. Marriage is dead, and the men who realize this first win.